Hello, everyone. Welcome to the September meeting of the Forest Park Chamber of Commerce. We're here right the day after Labor Day, a little bit of a rough day, I think, for everybody to get out. Maybe it's a good day for everybody to get out. So thanks for all being here. Couple quick things we'd like to talk about. We are in the middle of a fall membership drive. If you saw it in the communicator, if you are not a member of the Chamber of Commerce and you would like to be a member of the Chamber of Commerce, you can join now and get 16 months for the price of 12. So you can pay for next year's dues now, and you get the first 3 months free. So. Or I guess that's 4 months starting now, but 3 more months from now. Upcoming events that we will have our October meeting will be the RCP meeting. So and Kathy is finalizing the details for that, and that should be out in you'll get an email about that shortly. And then our November meeting, Paul is working on it, and we'll have a regular meeting the second Tuesday of November. It may be here, but we also may have a tour that he's working on, so that might be a little bit off-site, so pay attention. We'll get that information out to you as well. And then in December, we will have the RCP meeting as well, where everybody gets fun prizes, and it's a great holiday party. But we are also going to host the business recognition. And we're not saying it's a breakfast, and we're not saying it's a lunch, and we're not saying it's a dinner yet, but it's in the planning stages. So the last couple of years we've had it as a breakfast. And if anybody has any thoughts on if you would rather it be a breakfast or a lunch or back to being a dinner, you can email Paul. He'd be happy to get that information out. So with that, we are going to get straight into our meeting. What we are doing today is we have an update of the Northland Boulevard improvement project. So it's been a project that's been in planning for a while in the city of Forest Park, and Paul Brem and Chris Anderson are going to give us an update on what's going on there and what the future holds for it and how it's going to revitalize that corridor. So which one of you is starting? Chris is starting. Chris is up, so thanks, Chris.
All right, thanks. Hi, everyone. I think I know most of you, but I'm Chris Anderson, Community Development Director for the City of Forest Park. If you want to go into the presentation. Where this all started was we worked on and adopted a redevelopment plan for the city that had really 6 key strategies on it, but one of them was to do streetscape projects and corridor improvements along Waycross Road and Northland Boulevard, both of which were on a schedule to need some improvement in any case, but that if we could do some targeted public investment, that could have positive effects for the areas around them. So as part of that, we adapted some goals, and not going to read through all of them, but you can see that some of them are unique to one or the other, but many of them were shared, and with the object of increasing community pride, increasing private investment due to the better setting with the increased public investment. If you want to go ahead. So these are some more of the goals. Also, we wanted to help with non-motorized transport, including pedestrian access, and then on the Waycross streetscape, we put in some bike lanes on a portion of that. We also wanted to look at our community's branding, if you will, and we worked with a graphic designer on that, and particularly in some new gateway and wayfinding signs. You can see those, they're in place now on Waycross Road in front of the Public Works Department over at Hamilton and Waycross. Go ahead. And so specifically to Northland, one of the things that we wanted to do here is in addition to business revitalization, Northland is very dense with neighborhoods all around it, and these are some of the oldest neighborhoods in Forest Park, and wanted to make sure that that Northland, in staying viable, helped be a reason for people to, particularly more upwardly mobile people, to continue to stay in their houses, invest in their own properties, and just to keep that service area for them as a viable amenity for the neighborhoods that surround them. If you want to go ahead. So we did, prior to starting anything on the corridor, we did a corridor study. We looked at traffic, we looked at properties, and what we already had in terms of things like street banners, street lights, and median landscaping. And so it's a little hard to see on this slide, but that's kind of the distillation of some large public boards that we had from this period of time, if you want to go ahead. Mention that gateway signage and branding. This is our city seal on the left, and then the current entrance signs that we have in many areas throughout the community. One of the things about Northland that's a little different from our Waycross corridor is it's almost two different business areas. You have the retail and office area on the west, and then the light industrial area on the east, both with some different priorities and different challenges. For example, on the west side, we didn't have to really deal with any overhead wiring. Whereas on the east side, there's a major line for Duke Energy that they're in fact going to be redoing, and we needed to coordinate with that. And then just also in the medians, they're of different widths. They're wider in the retail area than they are in the light industrial area. And so we have a few more opportunities on landscaping in that retail area, if you want to go ahead. So in developing the landscaping, this is some of the work that we did on that. In selecting, we wanted to do it to the greatest extent possible native and drought-tolerant plants. You go ahead. And then developing a theme for our what we call our street furniture. So we have we'll be having a new bus shelter at the corner of Northland and Waycross, facing Northland. And we'll have benches throughout the corridor, mostly at bus stop locations, as well as new trash receptacles along with those benches. That's the majority of the street furniture. And then we also have some features in the median, including some wayfinding signs and some new banners. So if you want to keep going here. Yeah, that's the sort of the signage package. And you can see the color scheme. The color scheme is what we refer to as like an autumnal. It does have green, but it has those reds and yellows that you see, kind of in your autumn colors. So keep going. That's a little more of that. Some details on the street furniture. Actually, that's a little bit older picture of the lights on the bottom. Those lights ended up not being selected. We went with a different model. But one of the things we had to do on the Northland, because it already did have some lights in the median, we just elected to stay with those. But we're putting in new conduit so that at a future time, if we want to update those lights, we'll be able to do it without having to dig in to the streetscape. I'll just point out on the bottom left, that's a detail of the Waycross and Northland intersection. And we had additional pavers, those that's actually stamped concrete at all four of those corners to enhance that. And then we're going to have crosswalks that, if you've seen them on Waycross, have that same appearance. It's actually molded into the asphalt, but gives the crosswalk a very prominent appearance, very nice appearance. So if you can keep going. This is just a little detail of the landscape in the medians. All of the landscaping in the medians is going to be new in this project. And as I mentioned, what we have done with the selection of plants is keeping to some plants and shrubs that will be easier to maintain, and will not be as affected by droughts as some other species. So how do we put this together? We spent about 3 to 4 years applying for federal, state, and county grants and to package those together in a way that we could afford to do this project, because as you can see at the bottom, it's about a $3.3 million project, and that would have been beyond our means if it was something that we just have to fund locally. But fortunately, there are some transportation programs with the federal government. The first of those is the transportation enhancement. That's for the landscaping, the street furniture, the decorative elements of the project. And then the CMAQ, that's congestion and air quality grant. We got that in order to install new signals and a new signal control system to better improve traffic flow along Northland, reduces air pollution, people waiting less time. It's more responsive to changing traffic patterns. And then the State Capital Improvement Fund is another one that is covering our paving and curb expenses. It's actually the largest dollar portion of the project. And then we had a county grant to cover some of our design expenses. So the net result of this is that our local funds are paying about 10%, but we're getting outside funds for 90%. So if you can go to the next one there. This is the schedule. And if you haven't seen it, I'd invite you to go out and take a look. We're well on our way towards completion. The traffic signals, the new ones, are in and operating. Almost all of our decorative paving is in. It's about 90% right now. Curb work is substantially done. Driveway aprons have been replaced. What's still coming is the road paving, which will be at the end of this month. And that's a full depth repair of the road. So it should last for a long time. And then following on that will be the landscaping, and then following that will be the installation of the new signage. One thing I forgot to mention earlier in the talk on this is that part of this project is the sign that's owned by the Chamber of Commerce, and that sign is located at Northland and Route 4, and it has some business advertising on it. And we were able to include in this project refacing the top and bottom of the sign, bringing it into the same graphic family as we have with the rest of the signage. And then our chamber board is working on possibly revitalizing the middle of that sign, which would be a chamber expense. But all in all, I think we're going to, one way or another, end up with a fully refurbished sign at that end of the project. I think I had something else. That was it? Okay. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions. We're very pleased with how the project's gone. It was originally scheduled to go over 2 construction seasons this year and next year, but our contractor was able to work their scheduling, and we got pretty lucky with weather, so that they are now projecting to be fully done by the end of the year, which is well ahead of schedule. We've stayed within the budget, and I've had really very few complaints regarding inconveniences. So I think that they've also handled that pretty well, even when a whole lane has had to be closed off. Still been good at maintaining access for the property owners, and it seems to us that's gone smoother than even we would have expected. So we're very happy with that. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions. But Paul, I think, is going to talk about what we're expecting on the economic development side out of projects like this one in the Waycross.
Thanks, Chris. I'll just take a couple minutes to brief everybody. A lot of questions came up, I think, as you do a project like this. Why invest so much money on a corridor, $3.3 million? Why does the state or federal government or the city put that kind of money into a project like this? One of the things that we've discovered from an economic development standpoint is that when you look at these different corridors, the quality of the setting The quality of the environment plays an important part in our ability to attract and retain companies. We did lose a couple of companies out of the office tower on Northland, and one of the things that we heard from those tenants was the quality of place, the sense of place, the setting, that they're in wasn't quite up to par compared to some other sites. So one of the things we've tried to do with our investment is to help create that setting. Now, it is going to require some combination of support from our private sector partners as well. And one of the things that we're doing is we're working with the owners of all the properties in this corridor to try to see if we can't get them to piggyback on our investment and try to upgrade their facilities. Long term, I think we're looking at some major conversion projects along Northland. And I think we've had that discussion before about one of the things we're looking to do is convert some of our retail properties, some of our older, more mature retail properties, upgrade those or even convert them to some alternative use, some type of an office, medical, some type of a service use. That is something we're definitely looking at for the Northland corridor. So we're talking to those property owners. It could involve demolition at some point. It could involve some type of repositioning or repackaging of those properties. And these are obviously investments that the city could play a role in, but we really need private sector partners to come in and push those projects. And as is often the case, and I'm sure the school district belabors this fact too, you really need the private sector to come in and make that investment. Now, hopefully what we're doing is setting the table for that investment to occur. And that's what we're trying with this project. If you work down, Chris mentioned, this is kind of two distinct commercial districts, the industrial district and then down into the office retail corridor. The industrial district has always done fairly well for us. And indeed, if you look at that corridor even today, you've got Faxon Machining, Jones Machining, you've got that specialty machining, welding component, GMP, Steel Summit, Magna Machine. All of those companies, a good majority of them have expanded over the past 5 years, even adding to their facilities. So the industrial component has held fairly well for us. The office retail component is a challenge. Part of that's because the entire Tri-County retail market is changing. It's not just for us, it's our neighbors in Springdale are facing some similar changes with their retail district, and I think some type of conversion or repackaging of these retail areas is going to occur. So we're probably going to have to do some of that in our neck of the woods. Again, that could involve some demolition, could involve some new construction, but we have to find the right private sector partners to bring into that picture to make that work. And obviously, from the property owner's perspective, they need to find a way to do that in such a way that it does create a decent return on their investment. So it's a very complex financial picture. It's probably one that we can play a small part in, but again, we really need those private sector partners to make this work. The primary component from an economic development standpoint that I think we're going to look at is that Northland office retail district between Southland and Waycross. In my mind, that's going to have to be the primary component of this place. It's where we're going to have to kind of change the overall character, I think, of that part of the community. Retail for us is going to be different. When you look at that those two retail centers, those were built, I think, pre-interstate, right? I think, weren't they? So it's before you even had the east-west I-275 connection. Northland was your primary east-west corridor between us, Springdale. So now that whole character of that area has changed, and I think retail is going to be more servicing those neighborhoods that are in the area versus being any kind of a retail regional type of component. It's going to be more something that services the businesses and the residents who live in that area. And then we're going to have to try to really convert some of that to some type of a mixed-use component. The office side of the street, we are starting to see a pickup finally in the office market. We've definitely seen an increase in activity on our Winton and our Hamilton Waycross corridors. And now it's kind of time for us to see if we can carry some of that over to the Northland corridor. I think all of you remember Northland was a key component of our redevelopment project a few years ago. The city actually acquired some buildings that were blighted in the area, tore them down, cleared the sites for redevelopment. We're currently in discussions with the owners of some of the adjoining office properties to see if we can't find a way to leverage our investment with theirs to create a better office environment. I think that we can still attract office to the Northland corridor. I think the key thing is what we're going to do with the two retail centers. Retail's still going to be important. It's still going to be a player. It's still going to be a part of the solution, but it's kind of like a lot of our other retail properties. Do we really need that much retail space in total on the Northland corridor? Probably not. How do we convert that to some alternative use? This is a key stepping stone in this. The last time the city undertook a project like this, it sparked several $1 million in reinvestment along the Northland corridor, and I think that was probably back in the late 90s, I think, when we undertook some major road improvement, worked with the property owners. It sparked a redevelopment of Northland Tower. It sparked some reinterest in some of the retail area along there, and certainly helped us attract some interest to the industrial corridor. We're kind of pursuing the same type of model, and it's even a more extensive improvement this time. So thanks to the work of Chris, Dave Bisking, our Public Works Director, Rafiq, everyone who was involved on the Northland Streetscape project, obviously the support of City Council, I think that we've got a product now that we can take to market, and that's what we're going to try to do. So with that, I think Chris and I are available to answer any questions you might have and talk more about the project. John?
What's the status of the traffic congestion, maybe not in Northland? What were the results of those studies? Do you feel like there's a problem? Is traffic running smoothly? I feel like traffic overall in Greater Cincinnati is a huge issue. I'm just wondering where we are in Forest Park.
So the main thing with Northland was it was not so much traffic congestion or that the intersections weren't wide enough or operating, at a low level. They tend to grade these like you would a class, so anywhere from A to F. We didn't have any D's or F's on our intersections. What we did have, though, was the timing of lights was not necessarily conducive to traffic through the corridor or responsive to the change in traffic throughout the day. So what would happen sometimes is you'd hit the light at Southland, and then you'd go and you'd hit the light at Waycross, and then on down. Red light each time, or be at an intersection where you're waiting longer for the light to change than you really need to. You're sitting there and there's no other cars going the other direction. So that just needed to be modernized, and it was a way for us to get all new traffic signals installed. Our benefit from it really is more on the aesthetic side and the traffic flow, and that's actually still being tweaked. But for air quality and congestion, that's the rationale behind it, is that the less time you spend waiting at a traffic signal, the less air pollution you have. So.
I think one thing when you are drawing or trying to draw office, you've got to have some retail because there's got to be some balance. People have to eat when they're, lunch and things like that. And I know that we have the Roses here today, and they're a big part of Northland, and there's a couple other restaurants there. Is there anything that, will tie those together? You've got the light industrial there. I mean, how do you, I know that's an economic development, but is that something that will fit into the plan? If you've got restaurants that go in, you've got a lot more traffic going in and out, will that fit with the street plan, and how did you guys plan for some of that if you're going to get more restaurants in the area?
Well, I would say it does fit within the street plan. What we have, I think, is a need for is revitalization or reconfiguration of the two shopping centers on Northland. And so that, at this point, is not something that we could do anything detailed for. We have a general concept on how those could be revitalized and then still fit within that. If you'll notice in the middle of the block, there used to be a full signal. Because of the decline in activity there, it doesn't justify itself anymore. So it was installed as part of this project as a flasher. But we wanted to make sure that that stayed in our project as something that could be easily converted back to a full traffic signal at a time when we get more activity going on either side of that intersection, so that that can be reactivated in the way that it was operating before. So.
And I think you bring up a good point, and it's always kind of that chicken and egg argument of what's going to come first. And to get the restaurants and the retailers involved, I think one of the things that we've talked about is how we can rebuild our daytime population. The overall population, the residential population in that area, and if you look at the demographics, they still remain relatively strong. Good income numbers, solid demographic numbers for that corridor. They really haven't declined any. In fact, they've improved a lot, and they're projected to keep improving, especially income over the next 5 years. So the question is, how do we attract the kind of interest from those restaurateurs in that end? And one of the key things that we've found that has been missing is our daytime population. And if you think back to, maybe 10, 15 years ago, Northland Tower was home to a couple, 4 or 5 different major companies. We had a major accounting firm on the corner. You probably had another 400 to 500 office workers in that corridor during the daytime population, which aren't there now. So from the city's perspective, obviously, we'd like to see that come back because A, it's additional income revenue for the community that allows us to do more overall. But the other thing is just from the aspect of Northland Corridor, if we improve that daytime population, I think it's going to help us attract the type of restaurant product that you're looking to do. So one of the things that we've had discussions with the owners of Northland Tower or the owners of the Target Management Building or any of the other office properties along that corridor is how we could work with them, because if we can coordinate that improvement, it might help us attract the type of investment that you're talking about. Anyone else? Well, once again, thank you. If you have any questions about the project, definitely ask Chris or I. I have to thank Chris because, as he can tell you, I had a senior moment and this morning realized that I had forgot to ask Chris to do this presentation. So Chris jumped in at the last minute to do it, so I want to thank Chris. And again, if you have any questions about the Northland Corridor or any of the other corridors, redevelopment right now is our primary goal. If you look at any of the 3 commercial corridors, Hamilton Waycross, Winton, Northland, our focus is on redevelopment. We've had some success with it. Obviously, the properties are, obvious to all of us, I think. Hamilton Waycross, it's right at that corner, creating a gateway product. Winton, we all know the big pink elephant on Winton that we've got to take care of. And then, of course, over on Northland, I think it's this office retail corridor that we've been discussing. This is a tremendous step forward because it helps us, again, set the table for that reinvestment. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. And I guess some of you may have not known that we do own, the Forest Park Chamber owns the sign up at Northland Boulevard as you're coming from Springdale and entering in. And so we are, Mr. Aronson was involved in us putting that deal together with some of the businesses that are up there. So we're really working hard to figure out the best new use of that sign. So just thought, if you have any ideas about it, or if you ever see it, you can take a look at it when you're heading that way. So I think that's all. Does anybody else have anything else? Okay, we're adjourned. Have a great, we'll see you next month at RCP. Thank you.